Hello everybody and welcome to the latest pop culture news here on The Experience. Let's jump right in. Marvel's new Ben Grimm, Eben Bacharach, visited Jimmy Kimmel Live on Friday night, and we learned a few interesting things about the upcoming Fantastic Four reboot. Now, the actor showed he was already invested in the character, knowing both his tagline of "It's clobbering time" and that he comes from Yancey Street. He also admitted that he had learned about the casting back in August, just prior to the SAG-AFTRA strike, while he was walking on the streets of New York, where he just happened to be in front of an Astor wine store. So he went in after getting off the phone with his agent and bought a bunch of bottles of mezcal to celebrate. Kimmel asked the good question of whether it's going to be a suit or a performance capture, similar to Mark Ruffalo. And the actor said that it's going to be performance capture, where he appreciated the suit back in Michael Chiklis's days. He thinks that the performance capture or motion capture technology has moved along now, so much so that it kind of makes the suit idea seem amateurish. Now, the other thing he let loose or let leak is that there's already a text chain or a group chat involving Pedro Pascal, Vanessa Kirby, and Joseph Quinn, and they're all participating in it. So the whole Fantastic Four group, like the Avengers prior, have their own chain. The only problem for Mas Bacharach is that the only phone number he knows is Pedro Pascal's. So there are two London numbers on there, one being obviously Vanessa Kirby's, the other being Joseph Quinn, but he's not sure which one is which. So he's still trying to figure that out. All right, moving on. This was a bit of surprising news because after the popularity of the Percy Jackson and the Olympians over on Disney Plus, which got a second season renewal already, author Rick Riordan had some bad news about another TV adaptation that had been in the works. He texted to his posted to his followers, "Right now, Kane Chronicles is in turnaround, which means Netflix has decided not to move forward, and their option has lapsed after trying for 2 years to develop a script they liked. Now, it depends on whether another studio would like to step in, assume the pre-production costs, and move forward. This is not at all unusual. It happens, I would guess, with the majority of film projects. Also, the streaming industry as a whole is shrinking their development slate right now, meaning they are canceling more content and making less content." Kane got caught in that trend despite the strong success of Percy Jackson. Now, like Riordan's other series, the Kane Chronicles exists in the same universe as Percy Jackson, but it focuses on a different set of gods. It actually focuses on the Egyptian pantheon. So there are 3 books in that set if you care to read them. All right. Jumping over to Alan Ritchson, who is quickly becoming huge, and I'm not talking about his imposing physique, of course. The actor that many of us first noticed in Smallville as Aquaman has been showing up everywhere after the success of the recent Prime series Reacher. He was in the latest Fast and the Furious film. He's in the upcoming Guy Ritchie film, The Bureau of Ungentlemanly Warfare with Henry Cavill. He just got announced to star with Kevin James in a new comedy. His Titan series just wrapped up where he plays Hawk. There's a brand new movie of his out this week called Ordinary Angels, which is a faith-based film. And, of course, the 3rd season of Reacher is already filming. Now, it seems that another previous work of his may be popping back up. There was a college football series called Blue Mountain State, and it was kind of a comedy, and he was one of the big leads in it, a character named Kevin Thad Castle. Now, it originally aired for 3 seasons on Spike TV, and then it got moved to Netflix, where its audience just kept growing. Now, the show did 1 follow-up movie, but then that was it. Well, Now the creators Chris Romano and Eric Falconer are said to be behind a possible, you know, reunion project, whether it's another movie or a miniseries or something. That's all still in the early stages, but Richson has said that if it gets made, he would come back to play Castle again. So they have that, and it seems like Amazon Prime would be a good home for it. They seem to know what to do with a Alan Richson series. Over the weekend was the Screen Actors Guild Awards, and newly cast Lois Lane Rachel Brosnahan was asked about the upcoming James Gunn film, Superman Legacy, and how she was kind of preparing for the role of Lois Lane. And she says, well, I'm still preparing. I'm talking to some journalists. I'm reading lots of comics, so many I hadn't read before. It's been really fun to dig into the universe. Now, I take that as a positive because it sounds like she's read many comics prior to it. So it's not like she's coming in going, oh, what are these comics? How do I hold them? How do I read them? You know, she knows what she's talking about going into it. It's just she's reading a lot more books. Excellent. She and the cast of Superman Legacy just had their first table read this past week, but Brosnahan shared that she's seen a bit more than just the script. She said, I got to see the suit, and I was blown away. Now, another cast member, Anthony Kerrigan, who's going to be playing Metamorpho, and for those who don't know, Metamorpho was created by Ramona Fradon, who just passed away over the weekend at the age of 97. So rest in peace, Ramona. Now, Kerrigan said that it's interesting. He didn't want to share too much about it, but he did say it's interesting because I'm bringing to life a character that hasn't been done before. There's some pressure on that. Now, the character has appeared in animation before, but this will be the first time Metamorpho shows up in live action. All right, moving over to some sad news. Actor Kenneth Mitchell has passed away at the age of 49 from ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease. The actor is known for playing multiple Klingons on Star Trek Discovery. He played Carol Danvers' father in the Captain Marvel movie, and he was Eric Green on CBS's Jericho. He was originally diagnosed with ALS back in 2020 when he told People magazine, the moment they told us it was ALS, it was like I was in my own movie. That's what it felt like I was watching the scenes where someone is being told that they have a terminal illness. It was just complete disbelief, a shock. His family posted the following statement after his passing. With heavy hearts, we announce the passing of Kenneth Alexander Mitchell, beloved father, husband, brother, uncle, son, and dear friend. For 5.5 years, Ken faced a series of awful challenges from ALS. And in truest Ken fashion, he managed to rise above each one with grace and commitment to living a full and joyous life in each moment. He lived by the principles that each day is a gift, and we never walk alone. All right, moving on to the Star Wars franchise. Star Wars is coming to California to shoot. The entirety of the Mandalorian Grogu movie is going to be filmed in California. And what that means is that the Golden State is paying out a large tax incentive for bringing the movie here. Specifically, 21.755 million in conditional tax credits for the Jon Favreau directed film. This is one of the biggest allocations in the California Film Commission run's program's history. They're estimating to be hiring 500 new crew members, 54 cast members, 3,500 background players for 92 filming days in California this year. Now, The Mandalorian and Grogu is expected to generate a record-breaking $166 million in qualified expenditures and below-the-line wages. As fans of The Force know, with Mandalorian is aiming to be the first Star Wars movie to be 100% made in California, exteriors of Return of the Jedi were filmed in the state back in the 80s. All right, got two more stories for you. looks like Marvel Studios is going to break one of the things they said recently. Marvel made it clear that they had no plans to introduce characters in the animated series. Basically, before a character would show up on an animated show like What If, they would have to make their live-action debut first. But new reports say that that might not be the case with Blade, as Blade is expected to be a major character in the upcoming Marvel Zombies. Now, this is expected to debut prior to November 2025, which is when the Blade movie is currently slated, though many predict the movie will be pushed back. Also, there's no word if Mahershala Ali will actually be voicing the character in the animated series, but he is on board for the film. Now, the loophole that Marvel could use to get around contradicting themselves is that we did hear the voice of Blade at the very end of the Eternals in the Dane Whitman Ebony Blade post-credit scene. So they could call that the live-action debut, even though we never saw the actor and we heard only one line from him. So they could get around that. So, all right, and this is for the old-timers. EC Comics, which specialized in tales of horror, crime, and suspense, and was shut down in the moral panic of the 1950s, is making a comeback. Oni Press will publish 2 new anthology series under the EC Comics banner. Now, they don't really explain why they're not just going with Tales from the Crypt and the Vault of Horror or anything like that. It could be maybe those titles are now, licensed out. I don't know. But the 2 series are going to be Epitaphs from the Abyss, coming in July, which will be horror-focused, and then Cruel Universe, the second anthology, which arrives in August, will tell science fiction stories. Now, Hunter Goranson, the president and publisher of Oni Press, said the new stories will interpret the world of today much as EC Comics explored the American psyche of the 1950s. The cover designs will feel familiar to EC Comics fans. Running down the top left is a label declaring the type of story, whether it's terror, horror, science fiction, etc. And the logo evokes the bold colors and fonts of past series like Tales from the Crypt and The Vault of Horror. Now, the series are a partnership between Oni and the family of William M. Gaines, the original publisher of EC Comics, who died back in 1992. If you're not familiar with EC Comics, EC was one of the most prominent publishers in comics that were at the center of the 1950s trials having to do with Frederick Wertham and the creation of the Comic Code Authority and putting the self-regulation on the comic industry. There's a couple collections out there of EC Comics if you want to look into those. It's kind of a fascinating story. I don't know how much EC Comics on their own will be a draw for today's market. There's a lot of nostalgia going on in the market, like excuse me. Thundercats did very well for Dynamite, but your main comic buying community appears to be from the late 40s to early 60s when Thundercats were kind of popular. And, Dynamite's also doing a Space Ghost series coming up. That's likely to do pretty well with the nostalgia stuff. Gargoyles is doing very well. So the stuff that that age group got as kids is, of course, hitting the right bells. EC Comics went out of business in the 1950s, so the people that were actually reading them are more likely in their 70s and 80s now. So I don't know how much of that audience is still out there. Also, I've seen a list of some of the creators working on the books, and while they're good writers, it's Rodney Barnes, it's Matt Kint, stuff like that, they're not really the guys I think of as the big horror writers. There's no Steve Niles, there's no Joe Hill, no Cullen Bunn, the guys that are kind of making their name doing horror or built their name doing horror. I think of Rodney Barnes. I think Rodney's a great writer, but I think of him as the guy currently writing the Showtime on HBO Max. Now, it's not saying he can't do it, but if you're relaunching EC, shouldn't you be like going for the big names, calling up Stephen King and John Carpenter and those names? I don't remember if John Carpenter is still with us or not, but you go for the big names. You call Clive Barker, stuff like that. You try to get the big names who seem to also do comics, and that's who you get for the early issues. So, just my thought on that. All right, guys, that's the news. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned later today for Minute to Skim It, Mint Hunter, and Kicking It with Andre. Thank you.